Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with a final diagnosis on the zero tolerance 0392 PURBLKWC. Now that is a very long name, and honestly it's starting to get a little bit ridiculous with some of these longer ones. If you'll recall, I did the 0452 CF-M390 Blue. Something tells me they need to come up with some better names than this. It's starting to get a little out of hand. But in any case, back to this knife. So I've been carrying this knife now for a couple of weeks. And as you know, I'm a big fan of the 0392 series. I've owned a few iterations of that knife, and this is the most recent one. And it's been a nice addition to my collection, and I have enjoyed carrying it. Now, there were some downfalls to the previous Wharncliffe blade, and those do carry over this. So we'll get more into detail about that in a little bit, but this overall is a great knife. So let's go ahead and give you a brief overview. This is the 6th iteration of the 0392 line. It is the PURBLKWC, that stands for Purple and Black Wharncliffe. The name is fairly self-explanatory. What sets this knife apart from its earlier siblings is the full DLC coating on both the handle and the blade. Of course, the purple hardware is new, and perhaps the most important change is the fact that the steel, instead of being CTS 204P, is now Böhler M390, which is widely regarded as one of the finest steels available for folding knives today. So let's talk about this knife anatomically. We've got a 3.5-inch blade of Böhler M390 done in a modified Hinderer Wharncliffe blade shape. The standard Hinderer Wharncliffe is very similar in the sense that it's got that aggressive forward angled Wharncliffe tip. Some Wharncliffes are a much sharper drop off. Some are actually just squares. Some of them are rounder and they come down. But this one has a very aggressive tip, and that is in keeping with the Hinderer sort of tactical and emergency sort of bloodline there. And so that's totally fine. But I will say one of the drawbacks of that, particularly on this knife series, is that it creates a very fine tip. And I've said this before in other videos, that makes me personally a little bit wary to use this knife for heavy cutting tasks, for a knife that, if you're going to need a tip to do some draw cuts or some stab cuts, this may not be my first choice for that, because I'm wary about bending or breaking that tip. I will say, though, that tip, if you are looking for a knife to make very, very, very fine puncture cuts, I'm going to try to focus on this tip here to just show you just how fine it is. It really is screamingly sharp at the tip of that blade. If you get it anywhere near, say, like a piece of paper to try to test cut or something like that, it will just bite into it and then tear it all the way down, or cut all the way down. So that's pretty nice. It does have that going for it. I appreciate the swedge up here. It's really handsome. It takes a little bit of weight off the blade. It's got a nice flat grind. In the standard trim, you've got more of a machine satin going on, but you've got it covered with the full DLC coating here. You've got the ZT logo done in the white there, and of course the billboarding on the back. I have serial number 275. I am not the biggest fan of this blade shape. I'm just going to say that outright. I've been sort of mentioning it in a few of my videos, but I find myself unable to carry this knife with confidence, and that's something that I really need in my everyday carry blades. I am really able to carry this knife with confidence because the blade tip is not as fine, it's much more reinforced, and the angle not so acute on that swedge right there, where it makes it so fine like that. Another small drawback on this knife in terms of the blade is the lack of a true forward finger choil. Now this is true across the entire 0392 line. If you follow my channel, you'll know that one of my favorite knives ever is the BRN GLD iteration, again without a true forward finger choil. But Hinderer does make knives, and they just actually released a new series of knives in M390 with the no choil aspect like that. So that is, at least somewhat legitimate. It also provides you a nice sharpening choil if you like to sharpen your knives. It will do that, so that is really nice. It also is in line with the thumb studs, so your cutting edge is all behind the thumb studs. You're not going to run this into whatever you're cutting because there's no edge back here, so you shouldn't be back that far anyhow. So there are some pros and cons to this blade edge, this blade itself. I love the fact that they did this in M390. M390 is an excellent steel. I have had nothing but positive experiences with it. It is a little bit tougher to sharpen, but it will hold that edge for a long time. I've not touched this edge up because I wasn't sure if I was going to keep this knife. And we'll get into more about that later. Let's move back here. The next anatomical structure is going to be the pivot. We've got the standard KVT ball bearing pivot system that is wrapped around the Hinderer pivot right there. So Hinderer supplies all of this hardware, as you may know, including this really nice stainless steel, very thick pivot on the inside that's got the titanium screw holding it in place. I just want to say that of all of the 0392s that I've owned thus far, this one has had the smoothest action out of the box. Now maybe that's because there's DLC coating on the frame and on the blade. I'm not sure. I haven't taken this apart, so I'm not sure how that's wearing in. But straight away, I could tell that this was incredibly smooth. It's a very different action than the others, and that's not a bad thing. All of them have a very unique feel to them, a very unique action. This one has probably got the lightest detent and maybe the easiest to reproducibly flip. Some of them have detents that are so strong that my finger comes off of the flipper tab, but I'm able to open this one up. The detent on this one is actually light enough that if you're not really careful, you can... Oh, see, I made it go all the way that time. But you can deploy this with an incomplete opening. I have never experienced that on any of the other 0392s. All of their detents have been so strong that as soon as you overcome that detent, the blade completely flies out. So that's different. Not necessarily a bad thing, as I've been sort of experimenting and carrying some higher-end blades, even some custom blades. I've learned that a heavy detent is not always necessary. It's all about knowing your knife and how it flips and how to get it out the right way. And each knife has its own unique feel. So I am a big fan of the action on this one, just like on all the others. It is really nice. It is perfect, basically. And I enjoy it a lot. Up here around the pivot, you've got a little bit of jimping here. This is the same on all the other models. The jimping is okay. Your finger will dig into that last little groove right there, but it's not the most positive traction. There's a nice forward finger guard right there. Again, you're not going to really want to choke up on that at all. And the action is perfect. The pivot and all the things around it are good. Let's move back to talk about the handle. You've got the standard Hinderer Eclipse style handle going on here, same as the rest of the 0392 line. And I'm just a huge fan of it. I think that it is ergonomically one of the best handles out there, and it fits my hand perfectly. I have a rather large hand. I'm able to get my finger, my index finger here. The choil is angled backwards so that it rests nicely. The choil is angled backwards here so it rests nicely, and my fingers get good purchase there. This rests in the swell of my hand. And this thumb ramp, I think anyone who's held one of these, either the Eclipse or the 0392, would agree that this forward thumb ramp right here is just phenomenal for ergonomics. Everything is well rounded. There's no sharp edges. The frame lock is easy to disengage. It's got a light amount of tension. It's got a steel lock bar insert so that it locks up nicely. Lockup is somewhere in the 30% to 40% area right there maybe. Perfect lockup, absolutely no lock stick whatsoever. The one design element on the entire 0392 line in terms of the handle that I don't really like very much is the fact that they do these plain over travel stop discs. I feel like On all of my 0392s that I've owned, I have immediately replaced that with one that sort of matches the hardware. I did the brass one on here. I did the copper one for the standard Wharncliffe. They don't offer a purple one, so I'm going to leave this one alone. I wouldn't want to clash with a blue or something like that. Yeah, I know. He's talking about color clashings on a knife video, but you know, maybe that's another discussion topic I'm going to have here about coordinating your EDC and your colors and things. But you gotta love, speaking of colors, the purple hardware on here. It is really phenomenally beautiful. I am a big fan of the way that it kind of color changes in different lights, and with the finger oils that you have, and if you clean it off, it's got a different look to it. So you can see what this looks like right here. I'm going to bring in my cleaning cloth, kind of wipe it off, and show you kind of what it looks like when it's clean. So it's got a very deep royal purple. In different lights, you're going to get the Hinduer blues in there. You're going to have some hints of some bronze. And it's just very, very, very well done. And I really like it. Even the standoffs are done in purple. It's a fairly uniform purple. On the brown gold version, your OCD type folks like myself might get a little crazy because the clip and the screws and the filler tabs and the pivot, they don't all match perfectly. But on this one, all the purples are fairly uniform across the board, so I really appreciated that. And that about wraps it up for the handle here. Let's talk about it in terms of its EDC. The entire 0392 line is a great EDC line for me. It is Hinderer perfected in its own way, in terms of the action, in terms of the weight, in terms of the build and the fit and finish. It keeps the Hinderer clip, which is very nice to use, the wide spoon lip, the nice amount of distance from the frame here, and then having all four of these screws to grab onto when taking it out of the pocket is really, really nice. It comes in around 5.7 ounces, so it's not the lightest knife you're ever going to carry. But I think that weight is well worth it. There have been some good videos out there about worth the weight. This one is absolutely worth it. The feel in hand, the comfort, the solidity of this construction is just second to none, and I really, really like that. It just feels like quality in your hand. So really, I've enjoyed it. The drawback in terms of an EDC is just going to have to go back to the blade, where I feel that blade is a little bit limited in terms of its different uses that you can have for it. But each person will have different needs and wants from their blade, so for the right person, this might be perfect. In terms of this model, the one major drawback that I see is the full DLC coating. If you've ever owned a zero tolerance or a Kershaw knife with this DLC coating, you know that it's handsome. It feels great. I let a friend hold this for a little while, and he described this finish as velvet sex. And I don't disagree with him. It is really an interesting finish. It's matte, and it feels like it's, I don't know, absorbing your life force, or at least your finger oils. It's an interesting feeling to it. It feels really nice. I just love holding it because it's so comfortable. But that DLC, in addition to that fine tip, kind of prevent me from wanting to carry this, because I'm worried that if I ding it up or scratch it up on really anything that's steel or harder, that it's just going to leave a permanent mark. And if I were to use this blade on anything that's really tough use, it's going to put a permanent mark on it too. And that might affect resale value. That might affect my OCD in terms of the uniform black going on here. So, to be honest, my final diagnosis on this one is sort of 50-50. And, you know, that's not a very good situation to be in. It's always nice if you can make a diagnosis of a yes or a no, of a good to go or not going to make it kind of a thing. But sometimes you're faced with situations that are more complex than that, where you want to have a good outcome, but you're not sure if it's going to be there. And to be honest, that's not good enough for me. In terms of managing patience, I know what I need to do, work harder. But in terms of a knife there's no reason to keep something around that you're having any doubts about. So I have actually already sold this knife. I did not make any profit on it. I sold it at cost, and I'm not going to make a single penny on it. So this knife is about to find a new owner out in Hawaii, and cheers to you, my friend. I hope that you enjoy this knife thoroughly, and I hope that it gets used frequently. I know it's going to be really nice weather out there. I'm sure that he will appreciate that. So those are my thoughts on the 0392PURBLK Wharncliffe. Guys, if you enjoy my videos, definitely click like and subscribe to my channel. I'm making videos pretty regularly now. I've got a few more coming up in the coming days. Going to get some more light reviews going on in here, and I've got a very, very special knife coming in tomorrow that I'm going to get an unboxing video for. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for tuning into my channel. As always, guys, this is Dr. Frunkey saying take care.